everybody, welcome to our Star Telecom unboxing video for May 2023 of the new Genesys Cloud features. Again, joining me this month is new Papa Alexander. He's got a newborn on his side, and also Randall, our another solutions consultant. Hi guys, welcome.
Hello. How's
Hi.
everybody doing?
Yeah, we're doing great. I'm excited for this new. We've been now doing these videos for a couple months now, and there's been great feedback coming in from a lot of our viewers. And I think one of the feedbacks that I want to present quickly here, and maybe I'll do this for every video, is under our YouTube channel, and this is where you'll be able to view our videos. But working with our marketing team here, we've enhanced the searchability of these videos. So notice that we've now added chapters, and each one of these chapters in the YouTube video corresponds to one of the release notes. So now you can just go ahead and use the description down below, look for the particular features that you're interested for that month, and then just use the bookmark hyperlink to jump to that section of the video. Or on the right hand side here, go ahead and scroll the chapters to find exactly what you want to listen to. So save you the time from trying to listen to a 45-minute video podcast. Trying to make that easier, and we appreciate all the feedback. So go ahead, leave any comments down below here, and we're always looking to enhance our video viewing experience. Okay, so with that, everyone, let's jump into the May 2023 releases. And it's quite a heavy one, so I'm excited because there are a lot of aspects of this for May, and a lot of features here that are very exciting. Okay, let's kick it off under the Communicate section. Support for MDM browser authentication for Communicate iOS or mobile device management. This is not my area of expertise. I know Randall has a lot of sysadmin experience, so can you elaborate a bit more on this one, Randall?
Sure. So MDM, or mobile device management, goes on. It is basically an application that allows you to manage users bring your own devices, and it's a new standard that allows sysadmins to manage security for these devices. And this feature, the MDM browser authentication, what it does, it allows the user to choose what browser they can use to authenticate in the MDM. And of course, by authenticating into MDM, it then identifies the user and what applications they can use. In this case, Communicate iOS. Why is this coming out? Well, quite frankly, Genesys Cloud is turning out to be a very good alternative UCaaS solution. So instead of using it just as a contact center solution, using it for unified messaging, basically replacing your PBX. And so when customers do that, the Communicate iOS client allows users to be able to make and receive phone calls and other types of interactions, non-ACD interactions, from their cell phone.
Excellent. Thanks, Randall. All right. Let's move on here now. Additional voice transcription accuracy for Arabic. So again, thinking of all the regions where you could use, or even your customer base, right? So Genesys is adding support now, more additional support or improving the accuracy, of the Arabic language. So you also have to make sure you are subscribed or you have the proper licensing level to do that. But added support for that Arabic language. The next one here is, it may not be something that everyone's familiar with, but if you use, or if you know that Genesys has a browser extension for Chrome, but now also that browser extension has been supported for Microsoft Edge and Firefox. But the key thing to that is screen recording is now supported through this extension. So I'm just going to bring over my Chrome browser here, and under my extensions here, there's Genesys Chrome, or Genesys Cloud for Chrome. And what it is just the whole embedded interface that we're familiar with if you use a Salesforce, but it's now just a floating icon that you can have floating on screen here. So, I mean, this opens up a lot of use cases that some may or may not know of. But if you primarily use this Chrome browser extension, this now supports a screen recording with the appropriate background service. So it's very cool, and again, just very cool to see Genesys going full all in with the being able to screen record from the web environment.
I think just want to add to that, and that it used to be, if you wanted to record agent screens, you had to use the installable client, not the web client for Genesys Cloud. And so recently they came out with the background assistant, as you described. And now what we see is not only are they supporting the web client that we use every day in Genesys Cloud, but the browser extension as well. So that means that you can, if you're using the browser extension like we just saw natively, or an integration into a CRM or something like that, you can still screen record. I also wanted to comment on the Arabic translation update.
Sure.
We were Edgar and I were, as well as a few other team members, were in Denver last week for Experience, and one of the things that we saw that is really hot and up and coming is live translation. So we participated in a demo where I acted as the agent, and I actually spoke a dialect of French, Acadian French, and the agent was German, and the individual that was reading off the screen was telling me what I was saying in Acadian French in English to me, just so I knew what was going on. So what am I talking about here? What's the advantage? It means that we are getting to the point where we can effectively support customers, not just with text, but with voice, where the agent doesn't speak the same language that the customer does. Right? So we have artificial intelligence and transcription services in the back end making that happen. So just some food for thought.
Excellent. Yeah. It's an incredible demo that we were part of. Okay, next one here, automatic rescheduling time zone skipped contacts. So again, this is in your wheelhouse, Randall here, but basically now if a contact comes up in your list and the dialer's not able to call them based on the time zone that they're set for that particular contact, Genesys, you can set it up now so when the time zone does open up for that contact, Genesys can automatically dial that contact record automatically. Did I capture that right, Randall?
Kind of. So let me explain. In fact, we see this a lot because we take a lot of our customers that are using, I'm going to say, more primitive basic dialers into Genesys Cloud, which is far more powerful. What we see a lot is that if they're running a dialer campaign where they are taking care of customers in more than one time zone or several different time zones, they actually have to run separate campaigns for those time zones. But in Genesys Cloud, you could use one campaign and you use callable time sets to set when you can dial records in the time zone of the customer, okay? And so what happens is when the dialer is going through the list and it comes to a record to dial and it's in a time zone that we can't call at this point, now that will automatically be rescheduled after the record is skipped because we can't dial it at that point. So it's a very powerful feature of Genesys Cloud, outbound dialer.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, next one here, identify unused roles and permissions in the admin UI. So for those of us that have a lot of permissions, and Genesys now has made it a little bit easier to see if there are permissions or roles that aren't being used, that could potentially save you some license counts as well. So under the people's permissions here, and I'm going to scroll down to, I tried to do this a little bit earlier, but I couldn't find any permissions that are available that have been unused, which means I'm taking full advantage of my full license here. But under the person, so I'm going to select myself under role, there's this new column here, unused. So if one of these roles had a permission there that I haven't touched for 30 days, Genesys would check that off and say, oh, this role with this particular permission hasn't been used for the last 30 days, probably consider removing it. Maybe save yourself some licensing, right? So let's say I'm going to take Teams as an example here. Maybe you've assigned the Teams integration to users, but Genesys will be able to see, oh, that team integration hasn't been used by this user within the last 30 days. Maybe consider removing that, save yourself a couple license counts, and basically the bottom line at the end of the month. So that's a new feature, very handy feature there that Genesys has released.
And just to add to that, since
Yeah.
that level of visibility is also available for permissions as well, if I'm not mistaken. You can even kind of try and tidy up your org by just checking on permissions and seeing if better structured roles would be a good solution. So if a role is consistently having permissions that are not being used by your agents, supervisors, admins, whatsoever, you might even reconsider rebuilding it and just, tidying up your org basically, and having everything kind of more accessible in a way.
Yeah, I think that ties into what we're seeing as well in our deployments. We see when we take over customers that are already deployed, a lot of times where roles are configured based on what a queue or a team of users does versus the functionality you're trying to deploy. And it's important to understand that when you assign permissions in Genesys Cloud, the necessary licenses will also be assigned. So it's the practice, the better practice is to create roles that assign specific access and name the role accordingly. So for example, if I need to allow a user to be able to review recordings in a specific queue, call it, queue recording review, blah, 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 queue recording review or something like that, rather than giving that permission to an already existing role for, I don't know, contact center agent or something like that. Create a role that's more specific as to what it does. Right. And I absolutely look and see what licenses are being assigned, because in some cases you may be assigning a role that's to give an agent one permission, but which is included in that role, but it's also assigning another permission that assigns a license that they don't necessarily need.
Right.
Exactly.
The next one here is display the number of interactions routed via non-predictive routing method due to timeout. So for those of us that have predictive routing enabled for particular queues, there is this new performance view called the predictive routing queue details report that kind of gives us a better insight into how it's working, and if there's particular calls that are being routed that are not being routed due to timeout. So this is the performance view. So again, you can get to it from my workbench and predictive routing view, and gives us an overview. So this is actually brand new to me too, but what we're talking about here is out of the 893 calls, 100 of them have been non-predictive calls. So they were routed to a queue that has predictive route enabled, but 100 of them weren't routed via the predictive model due to timeout for various reasons in here. So again, maybe a subset of users that are using predictive routing at the moment, but it does give you insight into maybe there's something to figure out there, and deep dive a little bit more into how why that's happening, and troubleshooting a little bit more. Okay, so that is the details predictive routing view. Okay, all right, and finishing off here, there is a deprecation here coming at the end later this year here. Genesys will be removing the ability to deploy BYOC on premise via VM solution. So if first off, VM solution, so you can have a VM machine locally on in your call center, and then you could deploy a complete image of a BYOC SBC server in a VM environment, Genesys is removing the support of that. So again, that's probably very a niche deployment, but it is a useful function, if you do run your environment that way. So just something to be aware, that support or ability to deploy. I'm not sure yet if that means the support of that or VM deployments will no longer be operate. Yeah, so definitely something to keep in mind here. Contact your BYOC provider to see if that's how they're deploying the SBCs or your Genesys Cloud environment, telephony environment, and I'm pretty sure they are aware, and they're making moves to make sure you don't get impacted on that. Okay, so that ends May 3rd, 2023 release notes. Now the next section here is, let's jump into May 10th release notes. Slightly small here. Okay, very first one here. Oh, and I think Alec, you're going to be on deck here. Historical adherence and shrinkage view updates for teams. So there are working teams within Genesys Cloud that you can set, and this I believe gives us now a better, based on some of the performance views, a better insight into historical shrinkage and adherence based on those views, work teams. Alec,
Yeah,
you want to add to that?
Sure. So in a nutshell, it's basically just adding the work team filter versus the management unit filter to both historical adherence and shrinkage views. So it just basically gives you the possibility to actually look at both of these and compare either by management unit or report and monitor based on the management unit or based on a work. The best use case for the management unit versus work team division that might exist in Genesys is because there is a hard limit of management units that you can have within one business unit. So you might want to have an approach where your management units actually represent, and I might be repeating myself because we talked about this when we were talking about the work teams actually, but still it's worth kind of re-mentioning. So you might have the management units based on the contract type that you have in the company, because you're probably going to have more supervisors than compared to the limit of number of management units that you have in under one business unit. So what you might want to do is you want to transfer kind of that separation, the supervisor based kind of separation, to the work teams. And by that way, you can both check on your team's full-time employees versus part-time employees, as well as on the individual team's performance. And yeah, basically just getting the ability to check also historical adherence and shrinkage for both of these just kind of complements the whole picture that is kind of slowly building up over the course of time within WFM as well as within Genesys as a whole.
Yeah, thank you. And then practically how it's done here, notice here under workforce management and performance views here, historical adherence, there is now these new views here. So management unit and work units here. Okay.
And it's pretty much the same view, just,
yeah, the
filter is different.
Yeah, excellent. This one's interesting. Next one here, route email to multiple destinations. So as Genesys Cloud handles those inbound emails to particular queues here, if Genesys notices that within the, let me just open this up here, where's the explanation here? Within the email, if there's a CC address or a BCC address, Genesys will look at that, and then it can route the email not only to the primary queue, but then also to maybe the secondary queues based on that CCC address or BCC address. So that's actually a feature that has to be enabled underneath the admin section, under the organizational settings. So if I go under here, so account settings and organizational settings, and I scroll down to contact center here, route email to multiple destinations. So now you can enable inbound emails to be routed to other queues or flows based on the two CC and BCC fields. So that opens up a couple scenarios there where it's going to the the customer support queue, but then also maybe a customer also tags their account manager to that. So an email can go to the main support queue, but also potentially to the account manager's escalation queue as well, if you have something that enabled.
Yeah.
So
really solid feature. Really solid.
Yeah. Well, I think this is coming out because what we're seeing is as more and more customers recognize they need an ACD solution to manage email, and they're moving away from solutions like using Azure AD or Google Mail or something like that. There's some features that don't translate over, and we hear customers say, "Well, I just need to do this. It was so easy in Outlook or in Gmail." So we're seeing those features now being pushed in. Where I see a use case with this is if you sent in an email where a customer sends in an email and you want to make sure that that email is responded to, but also you send it to another queue more as a process automation. So, for example, and we know that there is some process automation coming out soon with Genesys Cloud. So, for example, let's say an email comes in and you need someone to work the email and respond back, but you also need it to flow through some type of a process so that a document gets filled out or something gets ordered, right? Multiple destinations. So, yeah, I think this is the start of a very good thing, actually.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind was potentially an escalation email that goes directly to the queue where a customer responds to it, and to the legal department, just for archiving purposes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that the GDPR process in Europe is going to be mostly affected with this, because it's going to make that piece of work much easier, I think. Because up until now, it was kind of convoluted to work on the GDPR requests. But with this might become much more accessible.
Yep. Okay. Next one here, kind of in line with the previous feature here, is being able to see that CCC and BCC information in certain views. So the views are interaction, queues, details, and agent interaction views. So any interaction view here. So I'm just going to bring this over under the main interaction section, and I'm just filtering by emails. You can add those particular columns in there now. So I'm just going to filter by email, CCC, and BCC. So then now, again, if you're trying to look for your email interactions here, you can definitely see now if it was CCC'd or BCC. So again, very nice handy feature there. Okay, deprecations and announcements here. So search audit view is being deprecated. We'll remove the search audits view and independent view for documents replaced. It's being replaced now with, I'm going to believe it's now a performance view as well. Is that how you guys read it? How do you read that? Genesys will remove.
Well, the audits, when the audits first came out, while I liked the direction it was going, it left a lot to be desired. So both audits and alerts are being revamped to make it easier for us to search for who changed what and when. And on the alerting side, they've taken the alerting just on that topic, instead of having a separate that looks like a bell up in the corner. Now it's actually a view inside of.
You're jumping ahead to the next month feature there, Randall.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the next
spoiler alert. Yeah. No worries. But yeah. Just an improved view of the audits view. So here it is right here, and just cleaner look with being able to filter a lot of different things there for the audit viewer. Okay, search audits API deprecation. So so just another cleanup of the search audits viewer. It looks like being able to audit the APIs is being moved into the developer center. Okay. Next one here is journey customer service deprecation. So it's removing the customer service API. is being replaced both by the LiveNow and Journey gadget again. So just cleaning up. Just for everyone knows here, there's a lot of API kind of cleanup. Genesys is an API first environment. So Genesys always updates and creates new APIs, and then it builds the GUID or the interface on top of them. So as Genesys releases new features, it notices, okay, we can slowly clean up our API backend. So that's where a lot of these deprecations and views are coming, or announcements are coming from. Okay, and that is May 10th, 2023. Everyone, so now let's move on here to May 17th release notes here. Let's dig into it right away. So additional ringtone options for the Communicate mobile app for iOS and Android. So for those of you who don't know, if you do have backend users that are not call center users, but you still want them to be able to receive those extension calls, manage their voicemails, and things like that, if you weren't aware, there is an app for that, both on iOS and Android. And when someone does get a phone call to their Communicate mobile device there's additional ringtones that you can go ahead and set. So very cool there. Contact Star Telecom or your partner here, and we can definitely clarify more on how you could deploy the Communicate to your mobile users. Okay, now let's get into the contact center features here. Agent email editor enhancements. So for those of us that are using email as an ACD media type, agents will now have the ability to add more details to their emails, such as more header information, and being able to work and be, like Randall mentioned in the previous video, to make the email experience within Genesys Cloud much more feature rich. So again, if we're used to handling emails within Outlook, Genesys is really doing a lot of work to try and replicate some of those features and make the email experience for the agent much more usable and friendly. Okay. In line there, again, email signatures appended to agent email. So when you do set up emails, an email route or for a queue there, you can have Genesys embedded a signature when the email goes out. Previously, I know I kind of work around, we use canned responses. So every time an email went out, go ahead and add a canned response, and that would include the email signature. But this is now at the email configuration level, we can go ahead and specify what signature we want to set up for those agent emails going out. Okay. Set SMS phone number pre-contact digital rule action. Okay. So generally, there are rules that you can set for outbound campaigns in general. So voice. So there's pre-dialing rules and post-dialing rules. Genesys has now have that for some of their digital campaigns, specifically for SMS. So when if you do set up a mass or an outbound campaign for SMS, you're now able to set up a digital rule or pre-call rule for that particular SMS outbound campaign. So very quickly here under email, I go to my outbound campaign, and I'm going to go to digital campaigns, and I can go ahead and actually set rule management set there. I can go ahead and create a new, and sorry, I was working on one a little bit earlier here, where now I can go ahead and set up a couple before the SMS goes out, set up some rules. So for example, maybe that SMS list that you have, there's time zones, or there's a particular variable that you want to go ahead and set in the SMS. So if I can go here, add a condition, look at a particular column, and then what is it do I want to do? Do I want to set a template, set an SMS phone number, update a column, so forth and so forth there. Maybe mark this address as uncontactable. So maybe daily you are sending out SMSs, and on that day that customer set themselves, I no longer want to get SMS messages. You can go ahead and set up a pre-SMS rule to look for that for a value in the contact list to say do not contact me, and we can create a rule that way to make sure that the SMS doesn't go out and you are respecting the customer's contact choices, as an example for a pre-contact SMS rule. Okay. Perform multiple actions on an email. Agents can now perform multiple actions on a single email before they disconnect the wrap-up code, including replies and forwards. Okay.
Again,
so that
just boils into adding more of that functionality that customers are expecting from traditional email solutions in Genesys Cloud.
Okay, next one here is add and remove flexibility for email history in agent emails. So when a customer is going to go ahead and reply back to an email or send an email on behalf of a queue, you can now configure how much of that previous email history gets included in that response. So I think, Alexander, you have a good take on it. Can you go ahead and elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, so I kind of get the feeling that if an email, if an email thread was being, I don't know, if a person being, for example, a fashion consultant at an e-commerce business, for example, was talking with a customer about a product that the customer would like to buy, and now you got the email and you're actually tech support and you actually need to help that same client through the same thread, kind of log back into their account, for example, so that you don't really need to go over, the whole thread and just read the whole thing, because your specialty lies in tech support. So admins now get the possibility to actually kind of limit what you're going to see as an agent. Well, that's at least my take on it. I could be wrong. I'm not sure what the specific limitations and constraints are, but that seems like an appropriate use case for that functionality, I would say, at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. Again, I guess we're starting to see a theme here for May is beefing up the email experience in Genesys Cloud to really come in line with some of the industry-leading email specific clients like Outlook, Gmail. Next one here is a wrap-up summary report filtered by default at the queue level. So I'm going to bring this over in here. And so I'm under my queue activity performance view, and there is now a wrap-up section in here. So now all my wrap-up codes filtered by queue. So again, very handy from dispositioning how is these calls being dispositioned at the queue level, and then obviously now that gives us me the ability to export and filter, create a performance view around this view. Okay.
Nice feature.
Yeah. Including static download links for exports. Users can now download the scheduled CSV from a static link. So again, just going back in here and under my performance views and new tab, and trying to remember, I'm pretty sure there is a view here for scheduled reports. I'm trying to remember. Can you anyone jog my memory here where that could be?
It should be scroll all the way down. Oh no, but this is the one, no? Isn't it? The one that you're seeing on your main screen. Those are all of the saved views.
Saved views, but there's a scheduled. Talking about scheduled exports. I know I've seen this before. There it is. There. So this gives you the ability. You can view your scheduled exports and then be able to download that report directly from your scheduled exports and being able to view that data. So you can generate a static link here. We'll just go ahead and look at that and being able to export that. So right there. So when you go ahead and create the scheduled report, Genesys can give you a link to go ahead and download that, which then you can go ahead and share, right? So now you have a download link. Go ahead and send that over and to via your internal communicate tool, give you a link to download that. Kind of a handy feature, I think. Okay. there. Okay, so next one here is a couple of integrations here. So some of you may not be familiar with 8x8. So that's just a UC platform. Think of a PBX solution, and Genesys is now providing tighter integration to that platform. So if you do use 8x8 for your PBX, definitely go ahead and take a look at that. Improve communicate integration presence for Teams, Zoom, and 8x8. So now via the SCIM protocol, when Genesys SCIM users are not logged into the Genesys Cloud environment, that Genesys status can be now broadcast through these other environments. So where the scenario, and we're more familiar with MS Teams here at Star Telecom, if I'm a Genesys Cloud user and I'm a Teams user, but I get most of my calls and everything through my Genesys environment here, I can go through my MS Teams directory and to see if there's someone online, and within the Teams environment, what my presence will be displayed will be my Genesys Cloud presence and not my Teams. So I can use this as an example here. I know Ivan Govasevic, he is an agent, but right now it's saying offline because he's either logged off Teams environment or logged off Genesys. So that Genesys status will be displayed in your Teams environment. So I think that's very powerful and very good from a unified communication standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of customers that want to stick with their current UCaaS solution or their corporate PBX, for lack of better terms. Microsoft Teams is quite popular. Zoom is actually quite popular as a UCaaS solution as well, and 8x8. So this is just like you described, Edgar. This is a methodology that allows synchronization of user status so that if someone's sitting in Zoom can see what's going on with someone in Genesys Cloud and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the keys there is setting up the SCIM integration, which we can have a whole other presentation put on by Randall at a certain date. So if you are interested in Scheme in this one, leave some comments down below and we could look into creating a video for that. All right, let's move on now to the May 24th release notes. And under the communicate, here's an oldie feature being brought into the 2023 world: message waiting indicator improvements. So I'm going to let Randall kind of speak to this, but it definitely will affect our hardware users with Genesys Cloud. Randall, go ahead.
So communicate is the layer is a layer of Genesys Cloud for UCaaS, but also managing traditional phones. So for example, if we had Polycoms on users' desks, and one of the things that users like to have is most Polycom phones and most of the phones that are supported in Genesys Cloud will have a message waiting indicator light that blinks when they have a message. So what this feature does is that when you have a voicemail in Genesys Cloud, it'll light that light on their phone.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's move on here now to Contact Center. And I think this is a great example on how Genesys is always improving their backend services. So here is very specific for the English language regions: improve digits and numbers accuracy when it comes to voice transcription. So obviously Genesys releases features and it's constantly improving upon. So this is the voice transcription engine getting better at recognizing the digits and numbers when it comes to transcriptions for these particular regions in here. Yeah, gamification metric creation workflow improvements. So now if you are a gamification user, you have now a more precise level of improvement when it comes to looking at those KPIs from the gamification panel and providing better accuracy to those. So what do I mean by that is I'm going to open up my gamification panel in here, and some of these metrics in here that I haven't been online in a little while. I've been on away on road trips, but these metrics here, how they're being calculated, just much more improved upon accuracy when it comes to that. Okay, next one here is enhanced predictive routing accuracy with participant data. This is actually interesting. Again, I'm not a big predictive routing expert here, but based on this feature here, you can now plug in additional data to help improve the accuracy of the predictive routing. So by default, predictive routing looks at key KPIs, so like average handle time, as an example here, as a routing decision. But now you can feed in either participant data or agent profile data to further enhance that. So if I look at participant data here, we can take a look at the inbound customer. We can do some data dips, and then we can look at particular attributes. For example, is this customer VIP? Take that consideration into the routing of the predictive routing, and there's different other variables. And these are just examples here that you can put, but definitely a better way to enhance that routing experience for your customers. Okay, Genesys Dialog Engine bot flows and Genesys Digital Bot Flows additional English language support. So for the bot flows within Genesys Cloud, more English language regions are now supported. So Ireland, New Zealand, and South Africa is now supported within that English regions. Okay. For integration section here, support for JSON format output for trigger notifications here. So Genesys has this whole trigger backend where you can basically what's called orchestrate events. So if this happens, then trigger this action here. So Genesys now supports the export of those particular notifications in JSON format. So a much more developer-centric feature, but it sure is an enhancement that's will be well received. Okay, sticking on the trigger notifications here, developers and administrators can now create triggers for the activity notification topic. So a lot of the triggers are based around topics. So there's a new topic available that you can use as a trigger. So activity notification. Okay. So here we have a deprecation for customer journey cookie ID from the GDPR API subjects. So for those of you that are using customer journey via the API, that particular endpoint has been changed. So go ahead and deep dive into that to see what the replacement is for that. LiveNow permissions change. So Genesys has just changed the permissions for the journey segment edit permission. You now need the live view permission there. Okay. And that ends the May 24 week releases. All right, let's continue on now for the last week in May, May 31st releases. Under the contact center here, we have the more language support in the digital bot flows. So we have Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and Turkish language support. Again, great enhancements here. Really making Genesys, it is now, but much more enhancements from a worldwide perspective. So especially in the European markets, being able to support customers in a digital sense, customers in their native languages of Norwegian, Danish, Swedish, and Turkish languages. Okay. And a couple announcements and deprecations here. So we're waving bye-bye to Knowledge Workbench version 1. Obviously, that's been replaced by the version 2 knowledge base workbench, sorry. So look at some of the changes to go there. So if we just deep dive a little bit into see what's being happening here. It doesn't affect anyone using version 1. So if you were an early adapter version 2, there are some changes that you need to make there. So go ahead and read this announcement here to see how that affects you. But as far as I know from our customer standpoint here at Star Telecom, we've been putting everyone on version 2 of the Workbench. Okay, legacy dialog engine deprecation postponement. So it looks like Genesys is pausing on the deprecation of the legacy dialog engine, and it pushed it out to July 2023. So possibly some people haven't adopted the new dialog engine here, so it just gives you a bit more time to go ahead and make those changes to your digital engine bot flows. Okay, and last one here, a regulatory announcement and registration. So for any of our SMS users on Genesys Cloud, work with your partners, or if you do manage it yourselves, you need to submit a registration form if you are using outbound messages or outbound campaigns for SMS outbound campaigns. Sorry, you do need to submit a form to this email address here, so your services do not get interrupted here. So this is more specifically, you're using the 10-digit long code or toll-free for your SMSs. So if we go ahead and take a look at that particular form in here, so it looks like there is a somewhere in this particular page here, there is a form that you have to go ahead and fill out and submit it to the Genesys registration team to make sure you don't lose your service with your long code. And that ends our May 2023 releases video. Thanks everyone for watching. Again, remember that you can jump to any section of the video via the descriptions below. Please go ahead and like and subscribe our videos. Looking forward to talking to everyone next month. Alexander Randall, thanks for being part of the videos this month.
Always a pleasure.
Take care. Have a good one. Bye.